You've been lucky, I feel like, to work on movies, TV shows that have meant a lot to you beforehand, like
Yeah.
Star Wars.
I mean, yeah, Star Wars is the big one. I was always a big Star Wars fan. Episode 3 came out on my birthday. And, naive little me thought, wow, the last Star Wars project
This
is
is
going
the
to come
final
out
one.
on my birthday. I've been able to work on a bunch of Star Wars projects now.
Yeah.
Mando 1, 2, 3, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka.
Wow.
So,
it's amazing. On today's episode, we have my pal Mike Deliso, who's a Previs Supervisor. Mike's worked on many shows and movies such as The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Prey, Deadpool 2, and many more. And we're really happy to have him here today. Here's my buddy, Previs Supervisor Mike Deliso.
Hello.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Can't complain.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. The premise is that I get to talk with a friend of mine who is in the industry and in the film industry, has worked on movies or TV or any type of entertainment, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you have actually done all of that. For anybody who doesn't know what Previs is, could you maybe describe what our job is? Because both of us are Previs artists.
Yeah. I think the simplest terms is 3D storyboards, where we're helping figure out story, action scenes, we're animating them in 3D, lining up cameras and helping either, it all depends on who your client is, but either the visual effects supervisor, the
Right.
DP, or the director, or all of them. But you're working with them to essentially do a rehearsal of the movie for live action before they go shoot it. For animation, they're doing that before it goes downstream. And it's a little bit more like direct in animation as opposed to live action. Live action will use it more as a reference as they go, unless it's a full CG sequence. Then
Right. If it's a
like,
visual effects heavy sequence, then Previs
Yeah.
is like really heavily relied on because they know ahead of time what they can, we need a T-Rex behind them.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to shoot Chris Pratt or whoever else, this low in frame so we can get the T-Rex up here. And, that
camera needs to be this far
camera
from the
needs to
ground.
be this is the lens that we're
looking up.
using.
Yep.
So that, we can make it feel a certain way.
It's really used as I think the original intent, and it's still a big intent, but is to try and help save money on the day when they go shoot, so they could be better prepared and have everything set up, because on a shoot it's very expensive on the day to have people where you're going, well, maybe this angle. No. If you know that's the angle you need, that's the angle you need. And I think it's turned away also from just that, and it's really expanded to, well, we can screen this and we can see the story, and we could troubleshoot the story problems before we actually go on the day.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're going to go shoot the thing, cut it together, and go, we have a lot of story problems.
Totally.
So it's a way for them to trial their script.
Yeah, and it's awesome because they're doing it. They use it more and more, even for just conversational things, which is great. And basically just seeing it up like you see storyboards. But you guys don't usually work from storyboards, correct?
It's hit
Sometimes,
and miss.
yeah.
It's hit and miss.
But a lot of times you're coming up with stuff fully from scratch too.
So we'll go off the script. Sometimes the client will have storyboards already. Third Floor actually has an awesome story department as well, where
cool.
sometimes they will do storyboards for us and everything. But sometimes we have, sometimes it's a very minimal script. It's just like cool fight scene, and then we're kind of set up to do all that. Or sometimes it's really thought out. It all depends on the movie, the script,
totally.
how it's set up, or is this action scene just kind of thrown in after the fact, or maybe that would be cool to see. And that's the nice thing about Previs, is that you could try so many different things in such a much quicker kind of time frame to say, that sequence isn't necessary.
Right.
So great, we don't have to go shoot that sequence now.
Save the studios a huge amount of money to do that.
Yeah. With Previs, you are very limited, depending on if the sequence is going to be actually shot in person, like on a blue screen or a green screen or whatever it may be. you are limited to what a camera can physically do.
You can't
in
put the
real
camera
life.
that low because it'll be through the ground.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Stuff like
if
that.
there's a reason that camera needs to be that low through the ground, well, can they go on an Apple box? Is that something that they can do, or
Right.
do
Can
they
cheat
need to?
an Apple box is
Yeah.
cheating the actors up. They stand on
Exactly,
top
yeah.
of a box so that they're taller, and then you
Yeah.
can actually get the camera lower without.
Yeah. And it's like, or do they have to build that on a stage where they can remove that like floor? And it's like, and then that goes into a whole big thing of like, well, is it necessary? What is this? And
Right. And how
that's
much
a lot
money
of
will
the
it cost?
Yep.
Yes.
And then they go, can you not show that? Because that'll cost so and so thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And we go, yeah. We can frame that out.
What was the first project that you worked on?
Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
That was a great movie. I really liked that.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I caught it at the tail end of that production. So I was just doing a lot of like little things. I don't even know if like any of my shots really made it in.
Yeah.
But that was a fun one and a really special one for me because, as we established, I'm a big Disney fan.
Big Disney fan.
And,
right away.
you
Winnie
know,
the Pooh movie.
Yeah. That was especially like just a really special thing because, I lost my mom when I was young, and I get the Disney, fanatic from her and my dad.
Right.
And funny enough, just crazy timing, is that I think my first day at Third Floor was a lot of onboarding, but my first day on production on Tuesday was her birthday.
Oh, man.
And it was a Disney movie that I know she would have loved. So it was like
Yeah.
just crazy to be on that. So
Wow.
I wasn't on it for I think I was on it for a month, but
Yeah.
but so that was really fun because
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So full circle.
oh yeah, it was a weird thing, and I remember just talking with my family, and they were like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. What are the odds that that's the one you work on? You
Yeah,
know,
that's
of
what I'm
all the
saying.
things
Yeah.
that you could have worked on.
Yeah, because there were a couple of people hired on that same day.
Yeah.
And a couple of them went to some Marvel movies, and I was like, "Ah, man,
Yeah, I
I would
wanna
have
work
loved to
on the
do
Marvel
that."
movie.
And then I found out I was on Christopher Robin, and I'm like, "All right, well, this is pretty special too."
Yeah.
And
Yeah, maybe even more now in hindsight, right?
Yeah,
Than
yeah,
any of the
yeah.
other ones could have been.
definitely more emotional.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
Well, that's kind of
impactful.
happened to you a few times. Like you've been lucky, I feel like, to work on movies, TV shows that have meant a lot to you beforehand, like
Yeah.
Star Wars.
I mean, yeah, Star Wars is the big one. I've kind of hit like the majority, like the big ones. Like I've done a Disney film being Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
Deadpool 2 was fun to work on.
Yeah.
Again, that was in post-viz. I was like a small little bit. I was on Captain Marvel.
Right,
And I've got
yeah.
to work on a couple Marvel things. But yeah, I mean, Star Wars is the big one.
Yeah.
I was always a big Star Wars fan. Episode 3 came out on my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And, naive little me thought, wow, the last Star Wars project
This
is
is the
going to come
final
out
one.
on my birthday. And,
Yeah.
But I've been able to work on a bunch of Star Wars projects now.
Yeah.
Like Mando 1, 2, 3, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka.
Wow.
So,
It's amazing.
Yeah. some
Talk
pretty
about full
special-
circle.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
literally,
one.
that's the one. Other than Disney, that's the other thing that I remember you talking most about when we met and throughout our friendship is Star Wars. So it's to be able to work on something. I mean, all of them are amazing, but like to be able to work on something like The Mandalorian, where it kind of set up, and the first season too. Like,
Yeah.
it set up this whole now what Lucasfilm is, and like, I do remember the first season, a few shots that were yours, and I was just like, I was very proud. I was very proud of my friend, and I
Yeah.
know like correct me if I'm wrong, is the shot with where Mando first like points at
Yeah,
Grogu.
I did get to previs that sequence.
Yeah.
And that was my supervisor knew I was a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And I was able, I think, to deliver. So he gave me a lot of amazing sequences to be able to previs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that project, like, I mean, Star Wars in general, I think I want to say majority of the people in the industry, there's a very small percentage that do not like Star Wars.
Sure.
But I think majority of the industry, it's
Yeah.
safe to say like Star Wars is one of the reasons that a lot of these people have come into the industry.
100%.
So to be able to be on that project, to be in at the very early time, and to kind of just help contribute in any little way. I mean, just like, I just feel really blessed to be in that situation, and to be able to then also touch something that just has a big impact in its kind of social, like, pop culture aspect, because
totally.
I mean, like, I get to walk around Disneyland. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows that I worked on it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But get to see, like, all these kids and adults wearing, like, Mando and Grogu stuff, and it's just weird to see that and just go, like, yeah, I worked on that, like, way before it was released.
Right.
And it was like, so that was just, I think it's the one I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
However you feel about certain seasons, it's just such a special
It is.
show.
And the cultural impact, like you said, is huge. And it's like, you also were able to be a part of something that I always feel this way with what we get to do for a living in general, which is you get to give back in some small way.
Yeah.
In the way that the artists who came before us got to do for us. So, the people who made Star Wars, the people who made the Disney films that we love, the Pixar films, gave us a gift by making the films that they loved making. And now we get to do that for the next generation. So you getting to work on that first season of Mandalorian, all the seasons of Mandalorian, but the first season of Mandalorian, you get to, you introduce these characters that now people will keep with them for generation. Like, that's the hope, right? Is that they'll love these characters, and now those characters are theirs, and they have personal ownership of those characters now.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, because I think while you're working on something, and I'm sure you've felt this too, but, like, you're working on something and you know that, like, this is gonna have an impact, and you definitely feel that, but then it releases and it's another kind. I mean, that was another kind of impact, fully. I think, as well. And it was just, it's so special to be, again, a small part of that team.
Yeah.
And just to be like, I did work on that. I do have some, like, crew merch that we got, and I get to wear it out. And, and people definitely respond, to that stuff. And so that's just, like, again, it's really special, It's so nice. I mean, like you were saying, I've been fortunate to work on a bunch of different projects, but I think for me, one of the most special ones is Encanto, because Encanto kind of had an impact in a way that, not every film does. And that was super cool. And now, same thing. I go to Disneyland, I go anywhere, and I see kids in Mirabelle, shirts, in the outfit, in the costume, in the thing, and it's just, every time I see it, it makes me smile, it makes me happy, and it's so cool that I got to be a small part of that movie. And I'm a big, as you are as well, musical theater fan too. So to work on an original Disney musical was like, that was a full dream come true. I haven't hit a musical yet.
That's know what?
Hopefully next time.
It's on the list, I'm sure. Deadpool 4, I'm sure it'll be a musical, right? Now they have Hugh Jackman. It's it's perfect. Exactly. It's set for that, right? But I mean, the musical was fun because I begged, and I was like, can I please work on a song? And so I was like, I really want to work on this song. And it was We Don't Talk About Bruno. And it was already cast, and that one's already cast. I was like, oh, okay, that's a pretty good song, though. I think that's gonna.
I think it's gonna catch on.
I think it might catch on. It's kind of catchy.
Have you thought? Because I've had this thought sometimes where, like, I work on a certain sequence or whatever, and you might bring some sort of ideas to it, etc. But, like, if you were to be cast on We Don't Talk About Bruno, you're like, would the cameras have been the same?
I do think about that.
How different would it have been? Or, like,
because
would
every artist,
any of the ideas change? Just that domino effect,
Any artist that's on any sequence brings their own thing to it, their own influences, experiences, all that stuff. And so it can, like, movies can fully be changed depending on what artist is on what sequence. I mean,
crazy
to some degree, right? Yes. Because at the end of the day, what we're all doing is we're making the director's vision, right?
Exactly.
So the director, whether they want it to be a close-up or a wide, it might be a little bit different depending on the artist, but you'll get close because the director will want it a certain way.
It's definitely a collaborative effort, just overall.
Huge, yeah.
Whenever I'm working with artists, I try to open that collaborativeness as much as possible.
Right. So you started at Third Floor as a junior Previs artist, right?
Yes.
And then as time went on, you worked on a bunch of different projects, and you got promoted to a lead.
Yeah.
And
sequence lead. Yeah.
Sequence lead.
Yep.
And then from there you became a Previs supervisor.
Yeah.
So would you be able to walk me through what that process was, getting from Previs artist to Previs supervisor?
Yeah. So I came in as a junior Previs artist. It's my first job in the industry. I've been only at that one studio, Third Floor, for my whole entire career so far, and did a bunch of shows about like 2 years or so. Then I got asked, like, if I wanted to be a lead, if it was something that I was interested in. It wasn't just like, here you go, you're going to be a lead now.
And this was by somebody who you were working with?
Yeah, this was by my supervisor, Chris Williams. He was just like, I guess he saw something in me and was like, hey, do you want to be a lead? Because there are artists that don't want to move up. They're very happy with just being the artist.
So he saw potential.
Yeah. So he asked me if I wanted to be a lead, and I said yes. And he said, cool. With that being said, he's like, I'm going to be a lot harder on you now. I'm going to push. I'm going to be trying to bring you into as many meetings as I can, just to try to get me to learn a lot of kind of behind the scenes. Because as an artist, your supervisor comes to you and says, okay, I need you to do this shot, or this sequence. It all depends on the production. Previs, for a lot of times, is like shot by shot, as opposed to like a full sequence being owned by one artist. As a lead, you have some client interaction. You don't have as much as being a supervisor, but you do have a little bit of client interaction, and
you're not as isolated as you are when you're just an artist doing the work. Here's the assignment, and you do the work, and then
exactly. You're in reviews. You're sometimes getting notes as a lead from the director or the VFX supervisor, whoever might be like technically your client. And that stuff is, you can't really just kind of say like, yeah, this is how it is, and it's a blanket statement. Every production is different as well, but you try to learn and be prepared for every situation. So that was, what Chris wanted to kind of teach, as well as say, okay, you're going to be in the kickoff for the sequence, and then I'm not going to bother you. You're going to have this amount of artists, and I need it done by this time.
Yeah. And a kickoff for a sequence is what?
Kickoff for a sequence is, it all depends on the production, again, of who's in there, whether it's the director, VFX soup, or DP. Sometimes all of them. But it's basically a meeting where you'll go over the sequence, and if there's anything the director specifically has in mind, any specific shots, any specific actions, does it need to be a certain way, or just just create something cool. It's all a mixed bag, really. But the kickoff is where you'll go through the script, you'll try and ingest as much information as possible. That way, when you go and create it with your artists on your team, then you can hopefully hit their vision. Yeah.
So as a lead, you're, for something like that, right? So you have the kickoff for the sequence, and they go, okay, it's going to be a dogfight. The dogfight is all different ships shooting at each other and, shooting them down, kind of like in Top Gun or something.
Yeah.
If that was what you were doing, how would that go as a lead as opposed to a supervisor? Are you assigning to the Previs artist what their shots are? Are you kind of the one who's looking at all their work initially, giving feedback, and kind of then presenting that to the Previs supervisor as a lead?
Yeah, so it all depends on how the supervisor wants to work. and how much of a relationship even you have with the supervisor. Because if you have a really good relationship with the supervisor, they're probably going to trust you a little bit more.
Right.
But if it's somebody they haven't really worked with, they might be a little bit more cautious at the beginning. In my experience as a lead, I was a lead on 3 different shows. My supervisor would say, hey, you're going to take this big action sequence and I'm going to give you, these artists, and you're just going to kind of run with it. And it would be, sometimes you would talk with your supervisor. It depends on how big the sequence is, if it really needs like a larger discussion. But we'd usually sit down, or I would just sit down, look at the script, try to break it up as best as possible where an artist could take like a good chunk of it.
Nice. That's
because
cool.
I like to, if I have an artist under me, like for a sequence, I like to have them have like a little bit of ownership in like a chunk. I don't really like giving individual shots. It probably will get to individual shots as you go through the sequence. But at the beginning, if I could give them a chunk, then it's like, that's their chunk.
Right.
And I feel like
it gives them ownership over it.
Yeah, a little more ownership, and like they're a little bit more eager to push for it. Like I know that's how I was. Like when I had my own sequence to work on, it's like, well, I want to make that sequence the best sequence possible.
Totally. Yep, me too.
So I would just try to break it up as much as possible. Look to see how we want to do it. Were we going to utilize mocap? Are we going to go into a studio? Are we using generic mocap, or does everything have to be hand keyed? And then from there, I would just kind of section that out, probably in a spreadsheet, and then getting the kickoff where I'm kicking off my artist. Lots of kickoffs, and then
all the kickoffs.
Yeah,
it's football, but no athletic ability.
A lot of gameplay. Yeah, exactly.
Or very little athletic ability.
Very little. Yeah. So then I would just go talk with my artist, depending on the artist. If I've worked with them, I've had artists that I trust with any sequence that I give, and I love having them on my team because the less that I have to worry about something, the better. Yeah. The sequence comes back like so close to finish, and then we just get to polish it and make it cooler. Yeah. And that's always like the exciting, it's really fun. Yeah. That's awesome. The fun part. But then as a lead, so in those situations when I thought it would be at a good point, then I would show the supervisor. The supervisor would either say, yeah, let's get this in front of the director, or if he's like, no, this is absolutely not it, or hey, this is working close, let's do this, this, and this, and this. And then I would go back with my artist, go fix whatever, get it ready, and then we would show, you know, in like a director review.
The Previs supervisor is delegating a sequence to the sequence lead, and then
they're
the ones
the supervisor, because the supervisor, you know, you're not just working, for the most part, you're not just working on one sequence. There are shows like that. But for the most part, there are a ton of sequences that are being worked on at the same time. So if that supervisor can hand off a sequence to a sequence lead and just say, hey, just show me when it's ready, then that's a lot off the supervisor's
and it speeds
plate.
up the process so much too, which is you know, why a lead is a valuable thing.
Exactly. Right? The lead, you know, not only just to be a sequence, to like overtake a sequence and kind of lead that through, right? No pun intended, but the lead is also there to support the supervisor, right? In whatever manner. You know, if the supervisor has a ton of meetings because they have a ton of director meetings or virtual camera sessions or, you know, all these different things, the lead is then there to basically review everybody's work, no matter what sequence it is, not just their sequence.
Yeah, they're the vice president of the Previs team.
Exactly. You're there to support the supervisor in whatever way that supervisor needs. And each supervisor operates differently.
So then from lead, you then, you did that a few times. You said 3 times you were a lead, something like that? 3 different shows?
So it was 3 times as lead. There were a couple times on those shows that I would like step in as supervisor for like a week or so if this supervisor had a vacation planned or something.
But as a lead, that was like what was that timeline like? Maybe like a year and some change.
It probably was about 2 years.
Oh, 2 years, yeah. Okay.
Because they're rough. Those productions were roughly like 7 months,
Yeah,
8 months
those were long
each.
productions.
Yeah. So it was probably like a 2 year thing because it wasn't also one after another.
Right. You had breaks in between, and then
yeah.
then after that, then making the jump from now lead to supervisor.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
That happened in a little bit of a not too strange of a way, but basically as I was working as lead, the supervisors are asked, "Hey, is this person a good candidate to be a supervisor?" And my supervisors said yes.
Yeah, they went to bat for you.
Yeah. It was lead for 3 projects, and yeah, basically at the end, they asked the supervisors if the lead is a candidate to be a supervisor. What do they need to work on?
Yeah.
If that being said, and yeah, they said that basically that I should be a supervisor.
Wow, that's awesome.
That I was ready for it. I think one of the biggest things, and probably not a misconception, but one of the biggest things as a supervisor that you need to have a handle on before you could be a supervisor is client interaction.
Right.
That's if you don't have proper client interaction, you can't deal with the clients or be in that tough spot, and you're not going to be a supervisor because there's no way that the studio is going to be able to trust you with a project. So then they added me into it's called like the supervisor pool, where basically it's just a bunch of supervisors, and as projects come up, if it works out, depending on what project I'm on, I might be chosen to be a supervisor.
Oh, cool.
So at the stage of my career, I've stepped in as supervisor on the projects when I was a lead, just for like a week or 2 at a time.
Right. And that's kind of the consistent thing throughout your career, right? Is it seems like you were one role, and then you would kind of get more responsibilities, and you proved yourself, and then they kept giving you a little bit more responsibility, and eventually.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that it wasn't always just me sitting there and then going, "Hey, you're pretty good.
No,
here you go."
No, of course.
Like there was a project, it was a commercial I was probably on for like a month, but we technically didn't. I think we had a supervisor, but they were busy with other projects because they were kind of like doing a bunch at a time. So I kind of took it upon myself just to try and like organize everything.
Right.
And then it's in those moments where the supervisors are saying, "Oh, well, hold on. He is doing the thing without being asked, without being this." And
you're showing initiative.
Yeah. So it's not just me going like, that kid might have something, and just like, let's
you're
see.
not sitting around
it was
and
me doing
waiting.
it.
You're actively, you're showing them, you're proving to them that you have the ability to take on those responsibilities.
Exactly.
They don't just, knight you and go, "You, sir, are talented."
Well, yeah. And it's also like, it's one thing even to like take on those responsibilities, but if you're thinking about those responsibilities without being asked, then that also is another step, because if he's mindful of that. So
and you probably enjoy those responsibilities too. Like it's something you actively you find it fun, so you're like, "Okay, I'll."
Yeah. And it's nice to be in that situation, because you do get, to run the team as much as you would like, all depending on the production. They might have like certain things that need to be done, just to be like, "Hey, you got to work this way. But for the most part, you get to operate your team as you like, and like, okay, this artist is going to go to this, and you get to kind of put that puzzle piece together.
Yeah, you get to build your team the way that you think it'll be the most efficient and best suited for the project.
One of the biggest things I still think to this day, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely get imposter syndrome, where I'm like,
yes,
"Oh God, is this sequence going to be like any good? Oh no, the director's just going to tear this apart, and you're just not sure if it's living up to the expectation that is needed." And that's still there. I don't think it'll ever go away, which maybe is a good thing because you don't want to be too confident, I think. And you always want to be like trying to push to make it work and to find, the story in your sequence. But before I was a lead, it was while I was being taught to be a lead. I forget what prompted it, but I was getting coffee with one of my supervisors, Chris Williams, again, who taught me a lot to how to be a lead and all of these things. And he just said, trust your instincts. He was like, trust your instincts. You have good instincts. Don't backtrack. Don't second guess. Like, trust your instincts. And
that's great advice.
I still think about that. And it's such a simple, like when you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, well,
right.
Duh. But like, I think once you try to like, okay, I just got to trust that instinct. If it didn't work, it didn't work. And that's fine. But let me trust it because there's a reason my gut feeling. It's a gut feeling.
Right.
And like, I always still think about it even now. And that was something like 5 years ago.
Totally.
So it's something I always think about. It's like, no. Okay, there's something. I got something, so I got to trust myself.
Exactly.
And if you're second guessing yourself constantly with all of these things, all these decisions, then you're also probably not going to be seen as a suitable lead or supervisor, because if you don't trust yourself,
right,
then how is someone going to trust you with a production?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is a real thing for everybody who is successful. I think you listen to anybody successful in any career, not just entertainment, but it's like imposter syndrome is very real, and trusting your gut is that. I feel like that's the strongest tool that any of us have, is the gut that you build from, years of experience, for lack of a better term, or just even, what your gut tells you before you have experience. When you're in college and you've seen great movies, what movies you like, what TV shows you like, why does something feel right or wrong when you're looking at it as far as your work, what you're making? Does it feel right? Does it feel like it's not quite there? And that inherently because you've seen enough content that it, you feel it in your gut.
Yeah, and I think we also have to be conscious of it, especially because we're creating sequences that people are going to view. If you're getting an uneasy feeling about it or whatever, the audience is also probably going to get an uneasy feeling.
Exactly.
Now, that being said, like, you can have, your instinct can tell you do this, but the director will probably have a different instinct.
Sure.
Sometimes. So
they're going by their gut.
Yeah. So, ultimately you'll probably have to change it to what their vision is if it conflicts. But for the most part, if you're saying like, I don't know, it feels off to me, an audience is also going to feel that as well.
So to that point that you were just saying, like, sometimes things get blown up, sometimes you work on a sequence for a month and then it comes back and, they go, oh, you know what? This whole section here isn't working. This whole section here isn't working. We're actually going to move the whole thing. It's going to happen over here now.
Yeah.
And sometimes that, as an artist, like, we're putting a lot of our art into it, a lot of our creativity into it. And sometimes, when you're a professional artist, now you're getting feedback on your work. Yeah. And I think that's really what it is how do you deal with feedback?
Ultimately, we want to show the sequence and then them go, wow, that's great. Yeah. And that's happened to me like once or twice. And for the most part, then it's always, okay, cool. Let's do this. Let's do that. Or no. When they say things, I'll try to ask questions, and I'll try to also explain myself of why we did this, why we did that, because they might all of a sudden understand it. You have to be careful of how much you push that, because then it just gets into like kind of like you're whining. So, you pick and choose your moments.
Right. And it's definitely not argumentative. It's just, this is why we creatively chose to do this thing. And then maybe they go, oh, okay. And then they meet you in the middle somewhere. And they go, oh, actually, I like that idea. Yeah. And they'll bring it to their vision.
Exactly. And, in my experience, anytime I've gotten a bunch of notes where like a sequence is completely just like turned on its head,
Right.
it's never a personal thing.
Oh no.
You know,
No, it's never personal at all.
So I always just try to keep that in mind. So like, they're not doing this to spite me. It's all to service the production and to try to make the best story possible.
Exactly.
So I think that's just something to keep in mind.
It's good for any artist to keep in mind.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, but it's tough, you know.
Yeah.
I've had sequences completely just like tossed, and you're frustrated, but you also got to get over the frustration quickly because you have to get it done.
Yeah.
And
you know it's for the betterment of the film.
Yeah.
And the show.
And for the most part, the notes that come in, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
It's for the most part, I do agree with them, and I understand, because as long as I can get some sort of explanation of like, hey, we're doing this because of this, and I go, oh, okay, cool, that's good to know.
Right.
Whatever it might be. Sometimes you don't get that, but
Yeah.
But that's how I try to approach it. As far as more of like a technical kind of approach to all the notes is something that I was taught, you know, when learning to be a lead and stuff, is just after a meeting, you know, you're taking a bunch of notes during your meeting. You got a big notepad and you take all of it down, We would always like debrief after that meeting and go over all that stuff. But then we would also throw it into a spreadsheet and whatnot and just try to consolidate all the notes just to be like, these are the notes that we have to hit. And and also, it's funny, if you get really specific notes, those are the notes that you want.
Right.
Because you go, yes, we will do that. But then you get notes that are insanely vague.
Yeah, a little more broad.
And they might lean on like completely turning a sequence on its head. But sometimes you have to try to play like detective and be like, well, what were they responding to that caused this whole entire thing? And then you realize that you're like, oh, all I have to do is just do this and this to like 3 shots, and all of a sudden that fixes their problem.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that called the note under the note.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the note under the note?
It's like in character animation, there's the dialogue, but then there's the subtext. It's the subtext of the note.
Right.
Is really like
what do they
is.
really mean?
Yeah.
About that.
And it's so funny because sometimes didn't you show the new version where it's like, 1 or 2 things fixed and go, this feels so much better.
Yeah.
And because that's sometimes all it is.
Yeah.
It's not always just like you have to fully redo the thing from scratch. I try to, if it's something like that, I do try to get time with the director if I can, and just try to talk it through just a little bit more, not with like a larger review where like everybody's in it.
Right.
Just something where we could discuss and I could just go, is that what you're feeling? Or, but it's tough to get that time sometimes with the directors.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. Their time is limited.
Yeah.
And what do you look for in artists when you're working with them? What are the skill sets that you think are really valuable for being a Previs artist?
The biggest thing is an understanding of camera and sequence, like editing. And that's not always like not everybody has it, but there are things that can be taught to have it. And that's like some of the things I do in a review. Because animation-wise, like character animation-wise, if you're a great animator, you could also teach the camera skills. But sometimes we use mocap a lot. So maybe the, hand key character animation isn't as necessary.
Right. And the cinematography.
But it's very helpful
Yeah.
if you do have it. But the cinematography is one of the big things. Are they eager to learn? Are they eager to try and make the best thing? And that's what I try. I try to create that environment for people to be excited about the thing that we're working on, because we get to make cool things for our job.
That's how you get the best work out of people usually, right? As if they're excited about it, you're excited about it.
Yeah.
You make the best product.
I'll ask them beforehand, like I was asked as far as like, do you want to become a lead? Do you want to learn to be a lead? Is if you're cool with it, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth here. And this isn't just like, hey, we need to change this, we need to change that.
Right.
It's we need to change this because of this. And we need to change this because of this. And I try to educate as much as possible. And for the most part, the artists have been very receptive to it and say, yeah, absolutely, do what you kind of like, I'd love to learn in that way, because one, it's going to help them improve and help them grow, and I want them to grow in a little bit more on like a selfish kind of manner. But like if they improve, then it allows a little bit of weight to be taken off of my shoulders as a supervisor, because I know that, you know, artist A and artist B like are improving, and I can give them more complex things.
You're trying to lead them to make their own decisions and find their own answers, right? That's the goal. You don't want it for them to have to be dependent on you at some point. You want them to be able to come to these conclusions on their own.
And it's so, you know, because again, I had supervisors that really helped me learn, and I'm always still learning. Like I think any artist is always still learning. That is such a, I'm always trying to learn new things and how to grow and everything. And the way that I typically like to work is I like to give chunks to the artist, like I was saying earlier. And I don't like to, when I'm reviewing things, unless it's a very specific thing on the shot, I do not want to see a single shot. I want to see it in context. I want to see an edit. And I want the artist to edit everything. Because when an artist edits it, then they get to make decisions of how things flow. And they get to hopefully see, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. Or if they do something and they go, I think this works. And then I see it and I go, that doesn't work because of this. And we need to do this because of this. So I just try to give context to everything of what I'm looking at in a sequence and how I'm going about the sequence, in hopes that it will, you know, just kind of stay in their head for future sequences. Oh, you know, I did that last time, but that didn't work. I had to do this. Right. And, you know, it's not always a, you know, one size fits all, but it's a good basis to go off of. And then you can learn when to break off from it. And I think I've been successful with that. I've had a couple artists that I've really seen grow while they were on my teams, and it's validating for that. Like, cool, what I'm telling them is it's working, because you don't obviously want to tell them wrong information.
Right.
Like I had an artist say, like, you know, I still remember stuff that you said the first review.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, okay, that's cool. So that resonates.
Yeah, you had an effect.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the hope, for them to improve and to grow, because I want to put them in a good position. Yeah. And
the way that you were put into those good positions earlier on.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. You know,
goes back to the whole giving back thing we were talking about earlier on in the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, but now you're doing it for the artists that are now working with you, working alongside you.
Yeah. Yeah. You shouldn't, I don't know, it's just my mindset. You shouldn't be trying to gatekeep anything. It's like, we're making some cool stuff. Let's work together to make the cool stuff, and for you to make better stuff in the future.
Yeah, totally. So if somebody was learning animation now and they're finding out what Previs is, and they go, okay, I kind of want to be a Previs artist. What would you suggest they do to become a Previs artist?
I think if you're starting out, having a solid foundation of character animation, like body mechanics. We do a lot of fight stuff, so body mechanics are very big. The acting stuff is not as important for us. There are moments that we do need the Previs, that like emotion needs to get through, but we're not able to linger too much on it. So I'd say having a solid foundation of character animation, mocap is a I'd say a plus.
So learning how to use mocap.
Learning how to use mocap, because in my workflow, personally, I like almost primarily use mocap. I can hand key everything if I want, but I like to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
And I just mocap a ton of things. I now have a suit of my own that I could do it, but even before I had the suit, I would take, you know, mocap from Mixamo or Rococo, from all these different libraries that we would have, and I would stitch them together for big action stuff.
Right.
If you're really trying to look to really make a statement in, I think, in Previs and everything, it's not so much in 3D, but it's understanding film. It's understanding storytelling. Yeah. And if you have that understanding of the right way to show something, you know, it goes into storytelling, script writing, it's all show don't tell. Like that's our job, is show don't tell.
Exactly.
Just understanding that storytelling, understanding that flow, and what makes a sequence great. That's what's really going to help. And
yeah.
I'm sure you have your ways of kind of studying that and trying to learn and improve. My way is, I think, looking at sequences that you like and trying to analyze it. But I feel like that'll only get you so far. You do have to put it into practice, and you do really have to sit there and like critique yourself.
Yes.
You might think it works great, but show it to other people. Don't be afraid to show it.
Oh yeah.
Because you're so invested in a project, like in a sequence, a project, whatever it might be, that you know exactly what's going on because you set it up.
Right.
You know what's going on.
Yeah.
But you need to show it to somebody that has no clue about that sequence,
Yeah.
like on your team or something, and go, hey, is this communicating?
Right.
Hey, does that make sense? Like the whole thing. So I think getting started in Previs is that understanding.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's huge. I mean, the learning filmmaking is kind of the baseline for what a Previs artist is. We're doing, virtual cinematography. So it's basically what, a live action cameraman would do, where they're in a set, they're shooting the actors and setting up the lights and kind of moving around things in the background to get the best composition. And that's what we're doing. And, not just the best composition, but telling a story in an image. And, amazing storyboard artists do this, and visual development artists do this. And we're just a continuation of that in our department, which is Previs/layout.
Yeah.
The clearest images are the ones that we're shooting for all the time.
Yeah. I think something too that just popped in my head, where this is kind of tough to learn because you have to kind of put it into practice. And I really didn't have any thought about this stuff like when I was getting into Previs, but it's blocking of characters. And like the blocking of characters, because that's not like a common thing that's really like, even for animator, like a finals animator, they're not really dealing with like the blocking. There's like a blocking stage, but it's not what you think compared to Previs.
Right.
Like blocking out characters is almost like a top down, just kind of football play of, this character is here, they're gonna go to here, they're gonna move to here, and it's figuring out their positions and
where they are in space in the scene.
With blocking of characters, Spielberg is a huge proponent of this, and there's Every Frame of Painting on YouTube. They talk about the Spielberg oneer, and it's all about actually not moving your camera around, but allowing the characters to move in and out. Like, I got to see this on a project that I was on, and it was so cool to see, and it just kind of like, I feel like clicked in that moment for me. And sometimes you need those moments. But it was just an over the shoulder of a character talking to another character, and the character that is in the kind of like mid ground is supposed to notice something past the person's shoulder, and they're like, they walk up and they put their hand on the shoulder. But it was awesome because we set up cameras, and we were like, over the shoulder, 2-shot, and these are all these basic coverage, what we call them, like where it's just like, every scene has a medium close-up and over the shoulder. You get that coverage so the editor can have a lot to play with. But it was just something in like a review where we're like, well, the director was like, let's do an over the shoulder, and this character is going to walk up and it's going to turn into a 2-shot. And it was just like, oh man, that's so nice. It just clicked. So blocking of characters, if you could find interesting ways, because otherwise that scene to me would have been like super boring.
Exactly.
And it would have just been like, it's a little more generic.
It can push the scene that much further creatively. Because now
Absolutely.
you're making it much more interesting, and then the audience is more invested. They're leaning in, and you want the audience to lean in as much as you can. That's that's one of our jobs. But to have those moments like that, that's a learning experience for you, who's somebody who's experienced. You've done this for 7+ years now. And it's just, I feel the same way. Every day you learn something new.
Yep.
And I think being open to that is kind of, that's one of the big strengths of people who stay in the industry for a while, I feel like, are the ones who are always open to learning, like you were saying.
Yeah, don't be afraid to learn new software.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things. There's a lot of new software coming out, a lot of new technology coming up, but don't be afraid to learn new software.
Right.
Like I've been learning Unreal Engine and I love it. I think it's great. There are certain things I don't like about it, but there are certain things that I absolutely love about it.
Right.
And just don't let that push away,
Right.
because all the concepts are going to be the same that you're doing. It's just the technical things that you do have to get over, that, that hump, that hill.
Yeah, the tools change, the artists don't.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You can, if you're an artist, you can use a pencil or a paintbrush or a spray can. It's all going to be, it's all, you using that gut that we were talking about to then use the new tool set.
Yeah, and for 3D animators, it's you use this software or you use these plugins, these tools that help supplement everything. Those are our pencils and pens and everything.
Totally. And I mean, when you go, as somebody who's kind of bounced around a little bit, I've been at a few different studios. When you're at different studios, the tool sets are usually pretty different. So you have to kind of be able to, morph into their way of doing things, and you learn how to adapt basically. And that's another valuable thing as an artist. Like I'm sure as a supervisor, you're looking for someone who's adaptable, right?
Yeah.
You want somebody who can come in and jump in and learn Unreal and, use their artistic tool set.
Yeah.
And, now use your technical tool set.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. There's always a ramp up time if you're getting somebody new in.
Right.
But there's like a 1 or 2 week, and then it's like, okay, now you got to be on top of it. Otherwise,
we need you to jump in.
We need you to deliver. So, adapting and being able to adapt, it's something that's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. So something that you've been doing recently, which I think is super cool, is you made a YouTube channel where you're doing exactly what you do in your day job, which is helping artists. The thing that you like to do in your day job, which is helping artists learn about new ways of doing things, new techniques, new tools.
Yep.
And you know what? Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah. I wanted to start to go over my workflows that I use at work every day. A lot of things like stitching mocap together. There's a video on that. And, if you're doing a stylized project, how can you make mocap and make it stylized, and all these things, camera techniques, things that I think about. Like one video that I'm actually editing right now is literally just a whole entire camera demo where I did like a small little scene, and I'm going through like setting up cameras. It's just in hopes that I can help share that knowledge to, because I'm able to share that knowledge to the artists on my team.
Yeah.
But hopefully that can help some other artists like out in the world, and hopefully it reaches, that audience. Something else that I do want to eventually venture into and everything is directing, and some stuff that I'm going to be doing on that channel. I'm working on a short film right now based off like a video game IP.
Awesome.
So, and then hopefully after that, after I just kind of get my footing and all that stuff, is like maybe introduce like an original IP kind of series or short film or something.
That's really exciting.
Because YouTube it's pretty crazy, all the indie animation that's actually on there. I feel like there's like a birth of indie animation on there. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely something different from we're so used to with, the movies and the TV shows that we're so used to. Disney, Cartoon Network. That is like the standard.
Right, the studios.
Yeah, exactly, the studios.
Yeah, people are starting to make all their own stuff because it's that's partially why I'm doing this show too, is the same reason. I have all of these amazing people in my life, all these amazing friends and coworkers that are super talented people, and I get the chance to talk to them all the time about their jobs.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think it'd be so cool to record some of these conversations so that people who are interested in the industry, want to work in the industry, can hear it and learn about, what it takes to be in this job and what it's like being in this job. And so the hope is to put that out there so people can learn from it as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully we're able to give back in some way, and that's what
Absolutely.
this is all about.
And it's funny, like in the short films that I'm setting up and everything, it's a lot of stuff that I'm learning, and I'm constantly looking at different softwares, and I'm trying to find the most efficient ways to do that.
Yeah.
So when I find those ways that are working for me, I also share them.
So
Exactly.
then as you're learning, they're learning along with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's almost like, in a way, it's seeing a peek into the pipeline process of these short films. So.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend, for coming on.
No problem. Thank you
Nick's
for having
Friends
me.
in Film here. This was so exciting, and this was a great conversation, and I hope that a lot of people get something out of this.
Likewise.
And go check out Mike's channel. He's got a lot of really great stuff on there. Thanks for watching this episode of Nick's Friends in Film. If you like the show, please like, comment, and subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Have a great day.